also instruct you on the other charges that this defendant is charged with. Attempted murder in the first degree, 1 count for each of the boys who survived. 1 count for Tevin Thompson, 1 count for Leland Brunson, and 1 count for Tommy Storms.
Your Honor, if I can object and just approach Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
May I continue, Judge?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
No, His Honor, Judge Healy will also instruct you on attempted murder in the first degree. And as I stated and as read to you before this trial started, the defendant is indicted on 5 counts. The first one, murder in the first degree. The second 3, attempted murder in the first degree. Now, in order to prove attempted murder in the first degree, the state must prove the defendant did some act intended to cause the death of Tevin Thompson, Leland Brunson, or Tommy Storms. And the defendant acted with a premeditated design to kill. That the act would have resulted in the death of Tevin Thompson, Leland Brunson, or Tommy Storms if that act had actually been completed. These final 3 shots, this defendant intended to kill any and all of them. He didn't care who he was shooting at. As long as he was hitting that SUV, he kept shooting. The SUV had already left. The threat that he perceived was already gone. And yet, the defendant took it upon himself to get out of his car, holding his gun with 2 hands, crouching down, the position Sean Atkins took. It's how this defendant described it. And then shooting round after round after round as that SUV drove away. And the defendant admitted, despite, he kept referring to it as, I think tunnel vision is what he had. Kept referring to yesterday on the stand, that he just had tunnel vision, just saw 1 red door, and he kept shooting. But he also testified that he saw that SUV pull forward. He knew it was leaving the scene, and he shot at the backs of unarmed teenagers. That is attempted murder in the first degree. He said yesterday, too, I think he said, well, there was 1 gun for them, so he was just shooting at all of them. But as I stated earlier, there was no gun in that Durango. The defendant knew no one had fired back at him when he fired these 3 shots. He knew that. There's a couple second pause between the first 2 volleys of shots and this third one. And the defendant told you, though, at this point in time, he was scared of blind fire. Something, once again, that was only in his imagination, just like the shotgun. Now, His Honor will also instruct you on the lesser includeds of attempted first-degree murder. And attempted murder in the second degree would then be the first lesser included of that charge. And in order to prove attempted murder in the second degree, the state must prove the defendant intentionally committed an act which would have resulted in the death of Tevin Thompson, Leland Brunson, or Tommy Storms. The state must also prove that that act was imminently dangerous to another in demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. And those phrases, the imminently dangerous for another and demonstrating the depraved mind without regard to human life, those are the same definitions from premeditated first-degree murder and second-degree murder. And finally, the judge will also instruct you on attempted manslaughter by act. That Michael Dunn intentionally committed an act which would have resulted in the death of Tevin Thompson, Leland Brunson, or Tommy Storms. And that except that someone prevented Michael Dunn from killing them, or he failed to do so. But as I stated before, what this defendant did on November 23rd, 2012, rose to the level of premeditation. That is why he is sitting here indicted on first-degree murder charges and attempted murder in the first degree. And finally, the 5th count, shooting or throwing deadly missiles. That Michael Dunn shot a firearm, that he did so at or into a vehicle of any kind that was being used or occupied, and that the act was done wantonly and maliciously. Now, I've defined both wantonly and maliciously for you, and it's something that Judge Healy will obviously instruct you on at the end of this trial as well. Obviously, what this defendant did was intentional. It was a conscious decision with a reckless indifference to what those consequences would have been. Now, His Honor will also instruct you on how you can go about weighing the evidence. How are you to decipher the testimony you heard? What tools can you use? And he'll read to you what are called weighing the evidence instructions. Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which that witness testified to? And as Mr. Guy pointed out in opening statements, the people you heard from are real people. The civilians who were at the gas station. They told you what they remembered from their points of view that night. Now, did everything jive? Was everything matched up like a perfect puzzle piece? Of course not. This is real life. This isn't television. It's not a crime show. Those people came in here over the past few days and told you all what they remembered seeing. Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the defendant's questions? In reference to that last one, what about this defendant's own statements? What about his testimony in court? He heard loud thumping music when they pulled in. He saw 2 young men with menacing expressions, Jordan Davis and Leland Brunson. But yet he told detectives, I don't know how many kids were in that car. He used the word kids the day after he shot into that SUV. It was only 6 months later, I think, when he wrote his statement that he writes, I glanced back and saw the rear windows were down and the back seat was occupied by 2 very menacing-looking black men.
Your Honor, we can object to this approach.
Yes, sir.
Menacing expressions on two young men versus I don't know how many kids. His own testimony yesterday when he said, Jordan Davis made his intentions very clear. Followed by, I didn't know what his intentions were at that point. Inconsistencies in this defendant's own statements yesterday. He stepped out. He told you from that stand, Jordan Davis stepped out. His 2 feet were on the ground. His whole body was out of the car. What did he tell detectives? He opens the door. Those are two very different facts. Inconsistencies in this defendant's statement about what happened. And here's the other one. Heard loud thumping music. And what does he tell the detectives in that interview? She gets out of the car, and then the music starts. Rhonda Rower told you herself from that stand, she heard that music. She told you this defendant told her, oh, I hate that thug music. And the defendant tried to clarify, well, I think what I actually meant was the bass hadn't started yet. Steve Smith heard that bass when he pulled up. He practiced common courtesy. He moved his car. Then went inside, minded his own business, made a joke about the music with the cashier, and then walked outside and watched this defendant murder Jordan Davis. What did he say yesterday? I probably had 3 to 4 drinks. What Rhonda Rower said was correct. I probably had 3 to 4 drinks. What did he tell the detectives? I had something to toast with, and a rum and coke. That's what he said the very next day, when his memory probably should have been, I guess, the clearest and the freshest. More inconsistencies of the defendant's statements. He said from that stand he heard Jordan Davis saying something, something cracker, and that's what started getting this defendant riled up. He never told this to the detectives in his interview. I should effing kill that mother effer. That's what the defendant testified to yesterday as Jordan Davis having said. That's what's in his letter, his account of what happened that he drafted 6 months after getting arrested. Never told that to the detectives. Jordan Davis slammed whatever it was against the door. He didn't even say shotgun. Whatever it was, he slammed it against the door. Do you think he told that to the detectives? Never did. This shit is going down now. That's the statement this defendant says is what set him off. That's when this defendant decided, I need to take matters into my own hand, pull out my gun, pull it out of the holster, take the safety off, chamber around, turn and shoot. That's the phrase this defendant said made him fear for his life. Did he tell the detectives